Either.
Hey, Timmy.
Hey, Dan.
How are you?
I'm doing well this evening. How about yourself?
Doing good. Doing good. Running in here, get this podcast going. I'm excited. We've had a little bit of a break here and ready to get this one going. And then we're, right on through the end of the season. So,
You're excited. I'm really excited because
yes.
I missed the last one because I was out on assignment and now I'm
Yes, you were.
back. So it's been a really long time for me. So hopefully I don't screw everything up today because you did an awesome job on your solo run. So I'm psyched to be back. That shows my age when I say psyched.
Yeah, that's okay. I appreciate that. It was difficult doing that without you. I was pleased to do it because I wanted to give the listeners some of what we thought about the race there at Gateway, and it was fun. So glad you're back. Glad to have you back, and we'll get moving on. But hey, you know what? I got some in the mailbag here. So I wanted to share something that a listener writes. Good job hiring someone smart and witty to handle the Twitter after Gateway. Keep it up.
Oh, wow.
So good job to the new staff on the Twitter handle after the Gateway.
I'm trying to think of
Gateway
who
race.
was manning that after Gateway, but
Whoever it was obviously struck a nerve with this listener. So we appreciate it.
did they point out anything in particular that made it so special? Or
Smart and witty, babe. Smart
and
witty. Look at that.
Whoa.
Clear and concise. Smart and witty. So
yeah, that was I'm happy that person came on board as well and did that. So thanks to our new employee.
Looking forward to great things from that person.
Was that just a one-time
season or this week?
Was that just a one-time deal for?
It was, but obviously we're going to have to keep it.
So I didn't know it was that popular. But I like it. I'm glad that someone wrote in on that one because handling Twitter can always be a difficult task. So thanks to that person for writing in, and thanks for the person who did it.
That's right.
Made it happen.
I think we nailed it. So good job. Good job to the Twitter staff.
Yes, great job.
So hey, Portland Grand Prix. This was fun, or Grand Prix of Portland. Sorry, I get it backwards. But always a good time. Glad to see us back there after a very long time. And we're supposed to go back last year, but COVID restrictions knocked that race off the calendar. Pretty much knocked all the West Coast races off the calendar. So it was good to take that off. But good to see us back in Portland. Always a good time out there. We always expect something to happen in turn one, and this did not disappoint, obviously, right?
Yeah. I had two observations before even the race started. But obviously we're going to talk about the race, but I want to talk about something that I have never noticed at Portland. Actually, two things. One that stood out to me was the color of the grass.
Okay.
It was so brown. I've never seen Portland that dry.
Very burned out.
Which caused for some dust and things of that sort on the track. But I was just thinking about the drought that they talk about, and that was evident with that event because you think Oregon, you think green, lush, and all that stuff. But beyond that, the other thing that I was noticed as well is that it's a drag strip, and maybe everybody knows that. But me looking at it today, I was like, oh, it's a full-on drag strip, and obviously they got events there doing drag racing. But those were the two things that were really non-race related that I noticed in watching the broadcast.
Definitely race related because we saw some of that dust get kicked up, and no better way to start your race with drag racing down the front stretch there, going into turn one. And it looks like Rosenquist hit Dixon, not hard, not very hard, but enough to make Dixie and Polo have to straight line that turn, and then it just gummed up everybody behind him. So, of the ones that I noted coming into that was Elio, Will Power, Oliver Askew, Roman Grosjean, and Hinchcliffe, our guy. It looked like Askew was able to continue on without having to make a stop, but I didn't see anything there in the broadcast. And then, of course, this put Award, Rahal, and Ed Jones out front as IndyCar reordered the field based on who took the racing line, which prior to this race, I didn't even know that was a thing. So
yeah, they showed all the different lines of when everybody's timed, and those that are stayed on the track and did the racing line were those that went ahead of everybody else. So yeah, I was surprised to see that. And it was good that they sort of defined, how that would take place, because I don't think there was any question about the reshuffle and the order, even though it always takes a few laps to make that happen. I think they were very clear in the drivers' meeting, and I didn't hear a lot of complaining about where people ended up, because it was clearly articulated to the teams. And not only Rosenquist hitting Dixon, but he also hit Polo. He hit both of their back tires as he went from the right side to the left side. So, yeah, it's always exciting in turn one on the first lap, and today did not disappoint.
That's right. So pinball of the race awarded early to Felix Rosenquist. So bravo, Felix, for being the pinball of the race here by hitting the two of the top championship contenders going
His
into
team
turn
even
one.
gave him kudos for not knocking out Dixon and Polo.
Yeah, so just lightly tapping them and getting away with it, lucky wise, I guess was good enough.
And I feel bad for Hinch, right? You talked a little bit about Hinch out of the race on the first lap. Alio used it for a practice session after they fixed the car, which is good, because from what I saw in the last couple of races, practice is good for him right now with that new team and them trying to gel for next year. And then Power, he battled all day, and Grosjean was, out as well there for a little while and came back in. So bummed to see Grosjean not be able to compete for a top five.
Yeah, well, we'll talk a little bit more about Grosjean, but you mentioned Hinch, and we'll obviously talk about him too. This was the first time I noticed in his interview with Kelly Tavis that he was like defeated, right? Because normally it doesn't matter what happens to James Hinchcliffe or what the race results look like. He always has a very positive demeanor to him. And in this particular case, he even had bad body language. His arms were crossed, over the front of him, and he didn't have that smile going, and he was just, defeated. I worst kept secret in the paddock is that he's out of that ride at the end of this year. And I think certainly to try to earn himself a ride in 2022, he needed a good race today. He needs a good race at Laguna. He needs a good race at Long Beach. So this, I think, just couldn't come at a worse time for him. And you could see it for the first time. I think that he really looked defeated in this one, which was really
I just think it goes to, if it's one race, that's fine. If it's two races, it's really bad luck. When it's three races, you're like, what else do I need to do to make things better? Maybe it's qualified further up in the field. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But, after the third time of being out of the race, he's just pretty dejected.
Yep. And as you kind of alluded to, it did take a long time to get this field sorted out. And we had a number of eventual front runners pitting on lap 9, which I thought was interesting because the booth seemed to think this is where we should be watching for potential winners. In the benefit of hindsight, they were right, because of those people who pitted on lap 9 was Alex Palou, Alexander Rossi, Scott Dixon, who were, of course, their top 3 finishers. It didn't work out so much for Connor Daly, Colton Herta, Felix Rosenquist, Power, or Askew, but for a number of other reasons and things that transpired throughout the rest of that race. So interesting, if you think about it from like a Paul Tracy and a Townsend Bell's perspective, they can look at that race as early on as lap 9 and really know who's going to be racing for the win on this thing. So I don't know if that's clairvoyance or if that's, obviously it's not clairvoyance, right? But it's the experience that they have that they bring to that broadcast that I was blown away by that, because they kept saying it. And I'm thinking to myself, Graham's going to win this thing, man. What are you talking about? Graham's going to win this race. And then it finishes out with, the 3 guys of those lap 9 finishers.
Yeah. And I think of those that were up front at lap 9 when the others pitted, I think Jack Harvey was the only one that was up there, and he pretty much stayed up there the whole race. Everybody else faded.
He did. Jack had a really nice race.
He did. But I was like, there's you got to look at it and go, okay, those are the fastest cars in the race that qualified. So they're going to be there at the end of the day, but it just didn't look possible at that point, in my opinion. I was like, we'll see where they sort of finish out. I don't think they'll be 1, 2, 3 or whatever it is, but man, they came back and I was a little surprised.
Right. We're going to get into the team by team breakdown of this thing, but I got to ask you, did you think Graham was going to win this? Like looking at his performance in the first third or first.
For your sake, I was hoping he was going to win because I know you're a big fan. And there's a little bit of me said, oh, he's going to do it. It's been since 2017 since he won a race, which was the Detroit doubleheader. And I was like, okay, he's due. And with all the news and information about the team there, I thought, it would make sense for him to have a breakthrough now. And it would be natural, I think, with, where they've been. And, so I thought, yeah, he's going to do it. And then got really bad.
Yeah, it did. It just how it shook out, right? The strategy, and he was on a 2-stop strategy and he needed some luck. He needed a lot more yellow than what he got. And it's funny because Graham, to me, at least, it felt like maybe I was willing him to win because of how long it took. But we have almost a full page of notes that we're going to talk about at the end of this thing about that article that came out about Graham, that nobody's talking about Graham, and that Alexander Rossi gets all this attention, and, Graham's beating these guys. But we're going to talk about that toward the end. So stay tuned, listeners, to that, but we're going to get into the team by team. So starting with Chip Ganassi Racing, Alex Polo, 3rd win of the season, a win from pole, even after that crazy start. Needed to be smart in this race to earn some points. Bad luck at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Engine let go at IMS Road Course before that. It really looked like it was going to be over for Polo's championship prospects. Tim, I know you were looking for Newgarden to make a run. I was looking at Dixon to make a run. I don't know what's going to happen in the final 2 races, but I think this goes a long way in holding Newgarden and Dixon at bay. At this point, and we got a long way to go, even with just 2 races. Do you think Polo's going to be the champ?
No.
Are you still sticking with Joseph Newgarden?
I am. When you qualify 18th, you finish 5th, you're the top Penske guy. I think you still got a shot with 2 races to go. You look at the point swing that just happened in this race, and there's 2 more races. They're within striking distance. So I think there's a possibility that Newgarden's still going to take away this championship this year from Alex.
Interesting.
And Award.
Interesting. I appreciate that. He's 25 points ahead of Award, 34 points ahead of Newgarden, 49 points ahead of Dixon. Erickson is 75 points back. I think this eliminates Marcus from championship contention, but he had a great season with 2 wins. Would not surprise me to see him get another win, and we'll talk about that here before the end of this podcast. 3rd place goes to Scott Dixon. This was a very Dixon-like race, smooth and start, taking his time through the field. Don't take too much and bide your time to get as much as possible out of the finish.
The top 3 finished in their starting position, which is crazy to think after the first turn incident. And yes, they all came through. And Rossi was faster than Polo at the end of that race. And then he got off into the grass, which would be the dirt. And he fell back from 0.7 seconds behind, or 0.6, whatever it was, to 1.6, closed it back down to about 1.1 by the end of the race. He was fast. He was good. And he came through the field there. Obviously, they all did after that incident. So there's more to be said here. And I think there's some quick teams out there that'll, mess with this championship a little bit and take points away from others, and others will capitalize on that.
Right. And speaking to that, one of the Ganassi teammates that I think we need to kind of be on the watch for is Marcus Erickson. So it was briefly announced in this broadcast that he signed a multi-year extension with Ganassi sometime over the past week and a half, which is really good for Marcus and Ganassi. I think he's smart. He's had a breakout season this year. Hopefully this continues. And and here's where it is. Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins Long Beach in a few weeks. He won Detroit. He won Nashville. These are bumpy, ugly street courses. And he proved himself there to be a champion. And what that means is somebody like that is going to steal some points from Newgarden. Somebody like that is going to steal some points from potentially Polo, from Award, from Dixon, to have a strong teammate like that. So Chip's going to let them race for wins as long as they don't wreck each other. I don't think there's going to be anything in the way of team orders there. And I've been saying it for a few weeks now. I don't think the Penske house is in order. So I just don't see any, willpower or Pagino, especially not Pagino, or McLaughlin being able to help or do anything to, assist Newgarden as to take points away from these other guys. 20th place, Jimmy Johnson. It's funny because in my notes, I just have, where are you, Jimmy? He was running 19th with 16 laps to go. This was the first Jimmy sighting on NBC that I could recall throughout this entire race. And I've said it directly and I've said it indirectly. He gets a lot of attention, which granted he should be. He's a 7-time champion in NASCAR. Good for him for coming here and doing what he's doing. The learning curve is steep. He's kept a very positive outlook and attitude at this thing. He's very popular in this series, as he was in NASCAR. But this was the first time I think we really didn't see much in the way of Jimmy Johnson or hear a lot of Jimmy Johnson, talk during this particular broadcast.
I just think they needed to show the new livery. So can't wait for next week's livery.
A lot of yellow on this one, and he didn't cause any yellow on this one. So maybe we stick with this one.
He was racing Sebastian Bourdain pretty closely there, so I thought something might come of it. But at the end of the day, Sebastian was faster and passed him. But there was that turn one pass that Sebastian came from way back and got by him, but had to go offline, and then Jimmy got him back. So they stayed on Jimmy for a while with that battle, and it was near the end of the race. And I was like, all right, let's move up to the front of the field and see some of that.
Let's go back out of here. So moving on to Andretti Autosport, Alexander Rossi, the second place finish for Alex. This finish must be a relief for Rossi. 2 years removed. Can you believe that? 2 years removed from his last win. I still believe that Andretti Autosport is chasing some of the development. It feels to me week in and week out that Rossi and Herta are doing more with less, which is probably what's contributing to some of the drought there with Ryan Hunter-Reay and Hinchcliffe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Rossi was fast, and that he could have won this race. I believe he could have put a wheel wrong, which got him back a little too far to come and take the victory at the end of the race. But 2 years removed, that's definitely something. First podium of the season, which is amazing too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, good job by the Andretti squad with Rossi, and Rossi came through. Maybe it's a good string that's going to be pulled together here at the end of the season, and that'll take him into 2022.
We'll see. Because always lurking behind you is his teammate, Colton Herta, who finished 8th. I'm surprised Herta wasn't able to do more with his 6th place start, which wasn't a disaster. That was a good start. There was obviously some setup concerns that reared itself early on the first stint when Colton was asked Brian, I want to call him his dad, when he asked his dad about the stop or the potential stop, and Brian was telling him 5 to 12 more laps. What is that? Like 5 to 7, 5 to 8, right? 5 to 12.
That was we're really not sure, or
right.
Or it's pretty much 12 laps, but we're going to put 5 to 12 to see if you can just hang on and get those tires to work for the next, 10 laps or 12 laps, whatever it is.
And similar.
Yeah, that was an odd answer. And he didn't seem to ask any more questions. I think if I was in the car, I'd have been like, what do you mean 5 to 12? What's the real number?
Right. Yeah. Just a weird thing. And similar to my point, right there, I think Colton Herta and Ryan Hunter-Reay are doing more with less. And that's the perfect example of it. hey, it's 5-12. I know the tires are kind of going off already, but we just kind of need you to hang on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and he hung on, right? So
He did.
he did well. He um, did okay after, you said starting sixth and then finishing eighth. So
yeah,
not a bad day, but not a great day.
Right. 15th place, Ryan Hunter-Reay. Ryan started 25th. An electrical problem prevented him from being able to take to qualifying. Finished 15th. An amazing accomplishment given the competitiveness of this field. He had a good run, but lost out to some pit sequencing. So just something a little bit bizarre there, put him behind. I did kind of think it was a little bit of a cheeky move to see Ryan either deliberately or accidentally elbow Grosjean off the track at one point, especially given that it's more likely than not that Grosjean's going to be in that car next year. I giggled a little bit, and then, I was kind of aggravated by it.
Yeah, I think it's just Ryan's had a really bad season and he lost his ride. So he's driving for everything and just putting his elbows out. And, and when he does that, other people get bumped and Grosjean got bumped off the track there. But I was, I guess, a little surprised by it, but not overly. I guess if you're in that situation, you're trying to figure out, what your next steps are and where you're going to be, whether you're going to be back in IndyCar or you're going to go elsewhere to drive. So, trying to make the best of the situation, I think, is where he stands right now.
Yeah, he is. He may get a ride next year. I don't know where, or how, or who, or if it'll be full time or whatever. But he probably is in the mix for somewhere. Maybe Coin. I don't know that move back to Rahal or anything is in the cards for that. We'll see what happens to him. 27th place Hinch, just bad luck for Hinch, getting punted by Grosjean. I didn't see it. They didn't really take it back to a replay, but when Hinch did his interview with Kelly, like I mentioned earlier, his team was working on the car. He suggested that Grosjean was a little overly ambitious at the start. I'm just kind of paraphrasing.
Mm-hmm. And that's last, by the way, 27 or 27 cars.
Yep.
Out on lap one. And as you mentioned in his interview, he was pretty bummed about the situation and was looking for a way to have a good result. And I think it should come. I think he'll do okay here in the next couple races, but it's bad luck.
He should. He's been to Laguna, right? I think he's a former Long Beach winner, isn't he? These are just things that are just coming to my head now, but
yeah,
he should have a good finish to the season in that car. I don't know that that's going to keep him out of the NBC booth or wearing an NBC shirt next year, but it's just been a bad season for him. And I feel bad for him and I wish it had gone better, but
maybe in turn one at the Portland race, doing the announcing right in the corner where you saw Paul Tracy, because Paul Tracy said it was like the scariest thing he's ever done.
Can you imagine that from a guy that rode 240 miles an hour around Michigan? That was the scariest thing he's done.
He's like, this is wild down here.
Love it.
Couldn't believe the carnage that was happening.
Yep.
And if you looked at it, it's like you're standing right on the other side of the guardrail and there's no fence or no nothing. So I guess it is a little scary when you've got 27 Indy cars rocketing towards you. So
for sure.
Understood, but maybe Hinch will be there.
Maybe. Moving on, Meyer Shank, 4th place, Jack Harvey. Jack had a good race today. I think he was in there. He assumes the lead when Graham pits on lap 75. I think this is a big deal for Jack. He's had a lot of potential, but some bad luck here and there. Came out ahead of Graham. He manages to keep him behind him. And I think he was really leaning on the fact that he was on those alternate tires and Graham was on the primary tire. He started 20th, by the way. This was a tough race for Jack. And I think he earned that finish, every bit of it.
He's that guy that's always hanging around.
He is.
And he's always there, just always there in the top 5, the top 10, right? Not going for the win, or obviously trying to go for the win, but he's always hanging around. And I keep saying hanging around because I'm thinking of a Counting Crows song. And the great race, you start 20th, you finish fourth, you're in that group that, kind of got moved forward with that first lap incident. And then he stuck with it. He was the top finisher out of that group. So good for Jack, good for Meyershank Racing. Alio on the other side was more involved in that first lap and got the other end of the stick there. But wow,
I don't.
Jack.
Yeah,
We'll see how he does at Rahal Letterman Lane next year.
Yeah. Now, speaking of, I can tell you, I was on pins and needles when Graham came out and was battling with Jack there, immediately following that pit stop, because that's the first thing that came to mind. It hasn't been announced, but I think it's pretty certain that Jack's going to Rahal Letterman next year, and seeing Rahal behind him, racing them hard like that. And I thought, man, they already came together earlier this year. And then they had the usual things that happen when Graham has a run in with somebody, the nonsense on TV, and then the little Twitter nonsense that follows up on it. And then all's good the next race. But I
about losing talent.
Yeah, that was recent, right?
That was driver though.
Yeah. Ed Jones.
Yeah.
In the Sebastian Bourdain Sumaster Honda.
I knew that was coming.
Oh, I love it. 23rd place, Castro Neves out, but later returned 17 laps down. Use it as a test session, as you suggested. Probably a good thing for Elio, that team, and everybody else. This couldn't have been a worse weekend for Elio. Shank was off this weekend, I think, with the qualifying efforts. Jack's finish was the highlight, but Elio qualified 17th. Jack qualified 20th, way behind from the green flag and an increased opportunity for something to go awry. It did, unfortunately, for Elio. I want to say this though, when they showed Elio's car after that first lap melee there, I don't know what was wrong with the car. Yeah, he was kind of like teetering on one of those curbs, but I don't know what was so wrong with the car that necessitated a 17 lap trip to the garage.
It bent the front toe link.
Is that what it was?
So they had to do a suspension change on it, and then they had to realign it. But he got in 91 laps. That's good testing.
Totally good testing, because they don't get 91 laps of testing from here on out. So it was good for him. So, and then here we are, our hit or miss Team Penske. What happened to them in qualifying? Power was 14th, McLaughlin 15th, Scotty McLaughlin, Joseph Newgarden 18th, Simon Pagino qualified 26th. So they worked the Penske magic and they got themselves going, but that Rahal principle, you can't qualify at the back of the field and expect to win these things. Newgarden got lucky, I think, with a 5th place. He needs to post at least one more win if he wants to stay in this championship conversation, at least my opinion. I know you disagree. Qualifying 18 puts him on his heels, especially when you see that Polo starts on pole, Dixon's in 3rd, and O'Ward starts in 7th. Those are the guys he's chasing. I would add.
They came together and they had a great result for the race. So
they did.
You finish ahead of O'Ward, who plummeted in the field after being first for several laps, and you're not far behind Chip Ganassi with Scott Dixon and Alex Palou. You're not far off, and you did okay.
Right. Okay
doesn't win you a championship, but it keeps you in the hunt. And when you have a bad qualifying like they did, which when we talk about bad qualifying, they're so close in terms of speed differentials and things of that sort. So you just got to be off a little bit, and that little bit hurts you pretty badly in qualifying. And that's what happened to all of Team Penske.
Right.
But he battled through, and it was a Scott Dixon type of ride. And I can't believe I'm saying that, but it was a solid, just work through the field, take your time. By the end of the day, you will have a top 5, Joseph. And if you said that to him at the beginning of the race, he'd probably been like, I'll take it. Like, let's just pack the truck and let's go home. But they actually did it on the track.
Right. I asked you earlier and you said you still feel like Newgarden is definitely in this thing for the championship through the rest of the season. Let me ask you this. Is there a Honda advantage over Chevy this season?
I don't think there is. Well, there always is on fuel mileage, I would say. Honda's always seemed to get a little better fuel mileage. But I also saw near the end of the race, there was a car that was peeking its nose out and couldn't get a run. And I believe it was a Chevy versus Honda, and the Honda car popped out and just kind of fell back, like got in the wind. So I think they have the power advantage if you have the car set up right and you have some straightaway speed. But at the end of the day, if it's a fuel mileage event, you've got an advantage, I believe, with the Hondas.
Right. I definitely think the Honda has an advantage this season, and I think that's what we see here. They had an advantage at Indy. They had an advantage. I think they have the advantage on these road courses. They're definitely all over it, and I think that's contributing a little bit to it.
So do you think it's pure speed, or do you think it's
drivability
power down to the track?
Yep, power down to the track. I think it's drivability.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I can agree with you on that.
Traction control, so to speak, right? But not really traction control. It's how well you get the power applied to the rear tires without spinning the rear tires. Traction control, right? It's drivability. Ninth place, Scotty McLaughlin led his first laps in IndyCar as pit stops were cycling through. Can you believe this is the first time he's led an IndyCar race this season?
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that. It's 5 laps, by the way, and I was really surprised that that was his first laps led. Knowing how well he's done on some of the ovals, I figured that he had a lap or 2 or 3 or, in some of those events, but good for him. That's good. I'm glad he finished the second highest out of Team Penske, which he hasn't this whole sort of season, if you will, except on some of the ovals. So good for him. I like it.
Yeah, so do I.
I can't wait for another picture of his dad standing in front of the TV. That's the next thing I want to see on Twitter.
Was that not awesome? I thought that was
awesome.
awesome. Yes.
So hopefully there's another shot of that going out.
Yeah. Will Power, 13th place. Will was caught up in the first lap melee. He reported under tray damage, and he had to change the front wing. All this work was done under caution, but a damaged under tray is going to make it a long day.
Anytime they bring out 200-mile-an-hour tape, I'm all about it. So it's good to see.
Yeah. 21st place, the outgoing, for all intents and purposes, Simon Pagino. Simon at some point was tagged Sato, then tagged and spun by Power. So these guys are just beating up Simon Pagino, and I think that's an indication Simon's leaving the team. He was running well ahead of his starting position of 26th, top 10 much of the race, but just had some bad luck. Another run-in with a teammate, like I said, Will Power, and a stop and go penalty as well. So this is game over for.
Yeah, and that's a bad incident. Will Power had you. You just back off and get in line and continue to work at trying to pass him if you can. But there was no reason to be there and no reason to have contact with your teammate. So that's bad news. And I think you just confirmed he's leaving.
I'm going to confirm some of the speculation that he's leaving. I think he's going to Shank, and that's what we keep hearing. But Simon's unable to comment about it. I think it's part of his contract.
And do you have a theory on what's going to happen in that car?
Yes. Hold on to that thought. We're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Aaron McLaren, 6th place. Felix Rosenqvist. This is the best finish of the season for Felix. He's steady, but doesn't get the same level of attention that Pato gets, especially given Pato's place in the championship hunt. This finish was a significant statement by Felix in that he was moved back to 18th place after the first lap turn, which was really the mess that he created. He's confirmed next year, and I think that's a good thing, as I believe we'll see a marked improvement by Felix Rosenqvist next year. Your thoughts? You took off the glasses.
Not only did he,
this is serious.
What's that?
Whenever the glasses come off, I know this is serious.
Well, you're funny. So not only did he outperform him in the race, his teammate, he also out-qualified his teammate, which was pretty big, because Pato started 7th, which isn't horrible. It's a good part. It's a good starting spot, but he started 4th. So, Felix is obviously been on that team, but he's not talked about a lot. Like you mentioned, it's all about Pato, which makes sense because Pato was in the championship league going into this race. So when you look at that, you go, okay. And Felix was with Chip Ganassi, as most listeners probably know, and he wasn't always up front either on that squad. So, you know, when you think of Felix, you think of, okay, he's a good second driver, I'll call him. But today he showed that he's good all weekend, right? That he's as good as his teammate, if not better. And it's just a matter of time to gel a little bit. And I think they've gelled, and he had a good result today.
Yeah, I think things will start to come together for Felix. I think we're seeing it now. I think that he's a quality driver. Is he the same level as Pato O'Ward? I don't think so, but he's definitely a quality driver. I think he needs some time. I'm glad that you know, Mclaren is hanging on to him for next year, because I would hate to see that seat change again. But I think that, you know, there's something to be said for consistency, and I think this consistency is going to be good for the whole team, not just Felix.
Mm-hmm.
O'Ward finishes 14th, never recovered from his first stop. The car just didn't seem to gel with the primary tires. He went from leading Rahal prior to the first stop on 29th to somewhere in the back. He, you know, pits on lap 84 to switch back to the alternate tires and rejoins 16th. Top that with reports that he was down on power. He kept saying that he was down on power. His pit box was reporting back to him that everything looked okay.
I think on the fuel mixture, they had the knob wrong or something. So he wasn't on the right setting. And so he thought he was down on power.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
I totally
believe that's what it was.
Oh my gosh.
I think those knobs pull on and pull off. And then if you put it on in the wrong direction, you twist it just a little much and you don't know which setting you're on. Maybe that's it. And that's what I sort of heard.
You have to love the concept of a $20,000 steering wheel and probably a $5 part that pulls on and off and can be misaligned from race to race.
Hey, you gotta make sure
I love
attention to detail, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Man, you got a way to help segue this thing. Attention to detail, Team Rahal, 10th place, Graham Rahal. Finally, attention to detail. Where did he qualify? 5th.
Way up.
Yes. 5th. Best qualifying of the season. So Graham assumed the lead when O'Ward pit on lap 29, and he stayed out to build that gap. It felt to me that Graham's strategy was to build his lead above that 30 seconds delta that you need for that pit stop. So he'd come out ahead of O'Ward. Again, I think like most people watching the race, certainly myself, I was watching them as the eventual winners, or them as being the ones. I don't know if that's correct grammar or not, but that it would be Graham and you know, O'Ward at some point battling for this win. And I think that's what Graham was really going for. So he finally pits on lap 36 as O'Ward is struggling with his primary tires. To me, this is a breakout race for Graham. Like, qualified 5th, best of the season, led 36 laps. He's led 36 laps total this season. Okay. This was by
today, just to clarify.
Okay.
Right. Just this was today.
Look, don't ruin my race here for Graham. This was by far his best race despite the finish. And I would point 100% to the 5th place start. If they can build on this, we will see and hear a lot more from Graham Rahal, maybe in the final 2 races, but next year for sure.
You lost 5 spots from your qualifying and finished in 10th. It's a horrible result for him. Horrible.
He was on a 2 stop strategy. He needed some help with that, with the yellows, and he needed some help with some things to fall through or fall together for himself to make that strategy work where he was at in the rotation.
And they had no contact all day, so you can't say something was compromised on the vehicle. Something went terribly wrong.
A 2-stop strategy.
Leading the most laps of the race. When you talk about 36 laps, that's the most of any driver. You qualify 5th and you finish 5 spots below that. And Yeah, that's not a good day for. Look at that.
See,
Did you hear that?
you know what? That is the IndyCar gods telling you to lay off, Graham.
That was thunder and lightning. If no one could see
Right.
the lightning, but that was thunder sound that just
I just
hit
want to
as
tell
I
the
was
listeners when I saw the
bashing
lightning.
Graham. But
Yeah.
uh,
When I saw the
yeah.
lightning, I thought somebody was taking a picture of you for our website or for our Twitter feed or whatever. If the Twitter team was taking a picture of you to post.
No, it was the big flash of lightning outside that then caused a big rumble of thunder. And my eyes went as big as saucers.
I know, I saw it.
While I was talking there. But I think coming out of this race, I think the team is feeling more defeated than if you qualify bad, which you have been doing, and you have a better result and you improve upon it. So I don't know how you rebound from this at all. So we'll see how that plays out.
I think you take it. I think you build on it. I really do. I think this is a positive. We'll see what Laguna looks like. We'll see what Long Beach looks like. To me, I think this is a positive. That starting position to me means everything. I know he finished 10th. The strategy just didn't work out. Two stops every, I don't know what the rest
he's on hot tire. Listen to this. So Ed Jones pits, right? Mm-hmm. He's on hot. Rahal's on hot tires. Can't get by Ed Jones. Eventually does, but can't do it right then. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, are you saving that much fuel that you can't get by this guy? So that's just disappointing. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, the top three all have third place or 3 pit stops. Yeah. Harvey and Newgarden were the outliers. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th place all stop 3 times. Graham stopped twice.
I think it would have been a good day if you finished 5th or 4th. It's a great day. It's a fabulous day, even though you could have won the race. That's where you should have finished, in my eyes.
Yeah. Takuma Sato, it was moving on to 12th finish here. He started in 26th place. So good finish by Sato to finish in 12th place, given that crazy starting in 26. But I think, what we heard from Sato this race was, some contact. He was involved in the first lap deal. He was involved in another issue with Bourdain on lap 90, going into turn 2. So it was just a bumping and banging sort of race for Takuma. I don't really know what to say here for Takuma. Started 26th, finished 12th.
Yeah, he improved 14 spots.
Yep.
It's a good day. You'd like to be higher up for sure, but didn't do so well in qualifying. And when you say didn't do so well, second to the last.
Yeah.
In qualifying, it's not like it was a mediocre qualifying. It was a really bad one. But then came through and rode a solid race.
Yeah. Oliver Askew in his debut with Rahal Letterman, he'll be in that car through the rest of the season. Oh my God, we got an eye roll from Tim on Oliver Askew. I can't believe it. Oliver has bad luck. Maybe I'm just feeling for him. He had bad luck. He finished 24th. He started 9th. First race of the season with Rahal, not his first race of the season. First race with Rahal. He knows he's going to be there through the rest of the year. I don't know what happened to him after that first lap spin. It looked like he just spinned on a lockup. It didn't look like anything was there, but to your point, it could have been it could have been anything, right? Toe link out, something could have been just enough. Askew, see what I did there, to to really ruin his race. But he never got up to speed. Spun again on lap 90, restart with a little help from an aggressive Sebastian Bourdain. While Bourdain, VK, and Askew were all in the same area and fighting it out at the restart. I think Bourdain got a little too deep on the curb. He nails Oliver Askew, and that's it for Ollie. He had a very eventful day. Tim's rolling his eyes.
Yeah. All I have to say is you got the wrong guy in the car.
Yeah, I know who you want in that car, but we're going to talk about it, so save yourself.
If you put the right guy in the car, you don't have a day like today. So. I'll put that on management.
I don't think Kyle Larson's available. Anyway, Dale Coyne Racing, 11th place, Ed Jones. What the huh? Ed Jones in the Sebastian Bourdain Sealmaster Honda assumes the lead when Graham pits. He stayed out longer than Erickson. What a great weekend for Ed Jones. Third in final practice, which I put no faith in, but I had to put it in there for you.
Oh.
Qualified 8th. This was a breakout race for Ed.
He was there all day, but he faded at the end.
Okay. Led 2 laps.
2 laps. That's good to see. Way to go,
Yeah.
Ed.
Good for him. He's taken a back seat to all the attention that Roman Grosjean gets at that team this year. So, good for him. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for Ed. I'm still waiting for Sebastian's name to be called and then seeing that car, but good for Ed. It was qualified, like you said, 8th. He lost 3 positions in the race, which you never want to see a car go backwards, but overall, good job.
Yeah, good job. Roman Grosjean finishes 22nd. He was already been awarded the pinball award for this podcast. He did return to track to use it as a test session. He was 15 laps behind. It just never seemed to get going for Roman in Portland. I'm kind of puzzled by that. And with an 11th place finish by Ed Jones, who's in the top 5 for a good slice of the race, just kind of unusual to me to see Roman kind of floundering like this. I still expect him to show well in Laguna, and I'll still say that's where I think he's going to get his first win. Is Laguna. Roman Grosjean.
I thought he was going to get his first win today, which would have been a feat from where he started.
Oh, for certain.
But all the incidences he was in, he only lost 1 spot
right.
from starting to finish. But did you know, Dan, he had the fastest lap of the race?
Yes, I did know that.
So he could have been there if he wasn't involved in everything else that took place. So
he could have been. Mm-hmm.
He's good. He just got to learn to not bounce the car off others. And next year, where he's going and where he's perceived to be going, he'll be good. Oh no, it's already announced, right? So where he is going.
Yeah, I would stay right where he's at. That I've said that before. I'll still say that again. Andretti's a top team, but I would stay right where he's at. I really, for one more season, I really would. And it's done deal, and he's going to Andretti, and we'll see how that all shakes out. But I would stay right where he's at for one more season.
Yep, I would move right on to the top tier team. So it'll be good for him. Like I said, he was the fastest lap of the race, the single fastest lap. So it'll be good. It'll be good to see how he does the next 2 races. Like you said, I think Laguna fits him obviously much better than Long Beach, but see how it plays out. But good for Roman on the fast lap.
Ed Carpenter Racing, 16th. Connor Daly started 16th. He finished 16th. He was running as high as 4th place. The strategy just didn't work out, but he also had a problem in the pit that put him behind as well. So, it was just a number of things stacking up against Connor. 17th place by Renus VK. Started 25th, finished 17th. Ran as high as 9th, but the strategy and the yellow flags just did no favors for Renus. Here's, I think Connor Daly is definitely a talented driver. I think he's a talent. He's earned that spot there. Renus won this year, and then we've not heard anything from him. And I'm starting to kind of scratch my head as to what's going on there with Renus VK.
Yeah, I think I know what it is, but I don't know if I want to just throw it out there because
just tell it to me, just between you and I.
Oh, just between you and I.
Just between you and I.
I think it's a team issue. I don't think it's a driver issue. So I think it's getting all those ducks in a row at the team and being consistent on a week in and week out basis is what is needed for any driver. And VK showed when they do have that together, he's able to perform and put that car up front. So that's where I think it stems, and I don't want to bash anybody. I'm just from, seeing how they've performed overall. That's where I think it lies.
Yeah. I don't disagree. In fact, I think you're 100% accurate in that. I think that it could be a little bit of a team issue there. I think that team puts a lot of emphasis on the Indy 500, and I think that's where a lot of that development goes. Although Renus had his win on a road course at Indy, but I just think that team focuses on the Indy 500, and that's, and they put some emphasis into the road course and the road course setup, and they do the best they can there. And I think that's kind of where it is.
Yeah. And, I was kind of bummed for Daly because he was fast. He had an opportunity to be in Fast 12, and he just had an off that caused him to come out of the top 12. So that's disappointing, because I think he could have shown his true talents there and could have really been on that 12 and maybe got to the Fast 6, but at least the top 12 for qualifying. So
yeah. AJ Foyt Racing, 18th place, Sebastian Bourdain. I want to say this was largely a quiet race for Sebastian until right around lap 90, when things started getting exciting between him and Oliver Askew and Takuma Sato. I just think it's an example of he's pushing with everything he's got, but I think the team is ill-equipped to deliver development either season long or during a race. It's a spirited run to the finish with VK and Chilton, albeit for 17th place. It's a shame to me, because I'm a fan of Sebastian Bourdain, and I'd like to see Foyt back in victory lane, which honestly I kind of expected it this season, and I'm just disappointed, and I'm certain that they are. I'm just disappointed with how that season seems to have gone.
I think it's a team thing, and hopefully with Larry, at the top of that team calling shots, that things will get better. And I don't see why they can't. It's just a matter of being consistent, putting together a good group of technical people, and you got to get out of the box fast, right? When everyone's running the same equipment, if you come off the trailer and you're quick, then that really attributes to a good weekend. So they just haven't been there.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Sebastian.
Yeah, so do I. When the field is this close, and you mentioned it earlier, with any little off in qualifying, you're 10 places behind your nearest, the guy you're challenging in the championship. But when you look at that, that's really about preparation. That's really about the margins, right? That 5%, right, in either direction. And that's where I think that they miss out on some of this sometimes. And Sebastian's forced to overdrive the car or do something silly like he did today, right, by clobbering the side of Oliver Askew, going in too deep, getting on the curb, and he's trying to do what he can, and the guy's racing for 17th place.
Mm-hmm.
So Dalton Kellett, 26th, he retired with a mechanical after 60 laps. I don't know what's going to happen at that team next year. I don't know if Dalton's going to be there next year. I don't know if Sebastian's going to be next year. Did you see earlier this week on Twitter Sebastian's comments about 2022?
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah, he said it's Foyt or nobody, which means he's not shopping around and he's not gotten any phone calls. He's waiting on Foyt to make a decision. Do you think he'll be back with Foyt?
I do. I think he brings a ton of experience that team needs from a driver perspective. Technical know-how. So I think he comes back and helps that team, progress where they need to go in the right direction. And then hopefully Rocket brings that young lady in. So maybe that's his teammate.
Tatiana Calderon.
There you go.
See two of those Rocket liveried cars. I think that car looks great. So
beautiful.
Carlin Racing, 19th place for Max Chilton. Max had a smoking hot qualifying run at Portland to start 11th. He was unfortunately cut out by something, right? Either the setup went away there were some other issues. He was running well within the top 10. Then it just went south for Max.
Yeah, it did. And I was really impressed with their qualifying. I don't know where he practiced in the final practice, but I was happy with where and he was up there. Like he could have,
He was.
started with us top 12. That's great. But yeah, they just fell off during the race and didn't come out with a good finish.
Yeah, he had a nice run going, which, I think he needed it. I think this was the time where he needed it. He had talked in the last couple of weeks about what he was going to be doing next year, and that's undecided at this point. But he had talked about the need for a teammate, which I think goes without saying, right? I think 2-car teams is where it's at a minimum, and I think a team like Carlin, which you've pointed out early in this podcast this season, that Carlin's a good team, very, very accomplished team. They've had some high quality drivers come through that team. Mm-hmm. So, but Max definitely, with where the series is right now, Max would definitely benefit by a teammate.
Agree. I think if you're in a single car team, it's really hard to compete, and their results have sort of confirmed that.
Yep.
They did have one top 10 this year thus far. So
I think that's it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hunko's Hollinger, they announced earlier this season or earlier last week that Callum Ilott will be, and that's the way I'm going to pronounce it because that's the way Kevin Lee was pronouncing it. So finishing 12th, he is going to be in that car through the balance of the season. I think a 3 race test for Callum in that. He was out, but I didn't hear in the broadcast what happened to him. He rejoined 19 laps down to get some experience in the car. It's interesting how many people were testing at Portland today during the middle of this race. He'll be in this car for the remaining races of the season and is trying to put together something for 2022. What do I tell you all the time? I could be in an IndyCar if I find sponsorship. So if you read this, they're looking for sponsorship to put him in the car full time next year. Mm-hmm. Do you know anything about Callum Ilott?
Just that he finished 25th today, not 12th.
Did I say 12th?
You did.
What's wrong with me? My God.
That's all right. I don't think anybody heard it.
Wow.
I just picked up on it. You said 12th.
I love it.
That's what I know.
Right.
I'm sure you probably have some good insight into this gentleman.
He's the official test driver for Scuderia Ferrari in Formula One.
Wow.
And he's the reserve driver for Alfa Romeo.
Wow.
Which makes me wonder if he would have been in that Alfa instead of Robert Kubica if he hadn't already committed to this IndyCar program.
Yeah, that's
filling in for
interesting.
Kimmy. Right.
And if you look at that car, Kimmy's out of that car, right?
He is. Yeah, he's retiring.
And you saw who was going in that car, right?
Yep.
Vladimir?
Valtteri Bottas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're saying this gentleman could have been in that car?
This young man. Hey, you never know. I can postulate. He's the reserve driver for Alfa Romeo, and Alfa needed a reserve driver when Kimmy tested positive for COVID. So Robert Kubica got to drive because Ilott's over here racing in Portland.
Wow. And that's interesting that you would leave the Ferrari organization to come over and drive for a team that is starting up in IndyCar, but I don't know. I don't know all the insight there. So
yeah, I think, a lot of these guys want to make it to the top rung no matter what. So
yeah, and you got a good shot at, competing and doing well in IndyCar, after you show your colors and how good you are. We'll see how his career goes.
So that, listeners, is the Grand Prix of Portland, the race review. It's going to be an interesting championship. Alex Polo comes back. He's going to lead this thing. And I think it's either Polo or Dixon. To me, disagrees. He thinks it's Newgarden or somebody else who's 150 points behind. So
it's Newgarden. He's going to do it for the third time. Everybody, You heard it here first.
Hey, I want to hit a few things here before we leave. Little silly season follow-up. Devlin DeFrancesco is the name being put out there as a replacement for James Hinchcliffe. He is currently 6th in Indy Lights as of right now. His dad, I think, is helping to fund his racing endeavors. I did have a chance to look up Andrew DeFrancesco, who's his dad. His dad's the CEO of a private equity firm currently, and he has a long list of founder, chairman, and CEO titles in his CV or his resume, likely supporting his son's career, as I mentioned. If Devlin is going to move from Indy Lights, where he's currently 6th, to replace James Hinchcliffe because he brings a budget with him, I don't like this move. To me, I would rather Hinch stay in that car or Ryan Hunter-Reay stay in that car. Or park that car. I would prefer not to see the guy who's running 6th in Indy Lights just because he's got a budget, and I'm being polite, move into that car. What do you think?
I think it's a very expensive sport to be in order to keep people employed, pay the bills, and make a profit. You need to have people that come in with some type of funding. So I think it's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just the way things work. And so let's see what he brings. He could be really talented. I know you mentioned several times he's 6th in the Indy Lights season, but I don't think it's a bad move. I think it's a good move to bring someone new in and see what this kid can do. So I'm all for it. I'm in.
We'll wait and see what happens. So also in silly season, Simon Pagino, he seems to be headed to the number 60 to replace Jack Harvey. I wouldn't have anticipated this, but I don't mind this for Simon. I don't mind it for Elio, and I especially don't mind it for Meyer Shank. This gives them 2 accomplished IndyCar vets with a combined 5 IndyCar wins, an IndyCar championship, and an IMSA championship. Whoever is paying the bills at Meyer Shank, and we don't know what that sponsorship looks like just yet, whoever's paying the bills has got to like the sound of that. This also plays into Meyer Shank in the Acura IMSA program. Tim, do you like this, or would you have found a way to stay with Penske if that was an option?
No, I like it. I don't think there was an option to stay with Penske. So you go over to Meyer Shank and you're partnered with your old teammate. And those 2 guys bring a ton of experience that is just going to elevate Meyer Shank. And I think in the big picture, it's better to have more good teams than just 3 good teams in the series, which is now morphing into 4 or 5 based on results from other teams. So if you can elevate this team and do it in a way that looks like, Simon's just going to Meyer Shank because he doesn't have a ride at Penske, I think there's a bigger picture in this whole deal and things that are happening behind the scenes that no one hears about.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it's a good move. I think it elevates the program. It gives them a certain level of credibility and gravitas there. I want to throw a couple of curveballs at you. Okay. So you're convinced, and I think I'm starting to get there, right? That
and folks, we did not have a pre-production meeting, so he's going to throw some stuff at me that I'm not prepared for. So just bear with us.
I think that Penske is going to park the number 22 for 22. Right. Kevin Lee agrees with you. I listened to his podcast.
How long ago did I say that?
Long time ago. I think, yeah, it's been on your radar for a while that 22 car was gonna get put away. I want to throw a couple of curveballs at you. Rinus VeeKay apparently has a clause in his deal with Ed Carpenter Racing that would allow him to jump to another team. Presumably that's named teams, because I can't imagine a contract just saying a better team or a higher ranked team or somebody like that, right? He's gone through some lean times since his win earlier this year. That seems to have kicked off, obviously, with the broken collarbone. Is Rinus VeeKay Penske material?
I think he is, but I don't think he is for next year. So I think he needs another season under his belt. And after that season, I think he's definitely Penske material.
I have to tell the listeners I almost fell out of my chair because I did not expect that answer out of you at all.
No?
No.
What were you expecting out of me?
I'm higher on Rinus VeeKay than you are.
You are.
Yeah.
But he pulled that win together.
He did.
Dominated that race.
He did.
With a team that isn't known for doing that.
Right.
It all came together. It was like a perfect storm, as you guys heard earlier through the thunder and lightning.
Yep.
That it totally, I think, definitely.
Right.
But I don't think it's next year. You got to take some time for Rinus to develop a little bit.
Yeah. How about this? Santino Ferrucci to Penske in the 22. Would Roger allow an open wheel driver, and that's what Santino Ferrucci is, to continue to explore NASCAR options? Remember, Santino ran Xfinity earlier part of this year. It was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
He could be the second coming of Paul Tracy, in my opinion. To me, I feel that there are some obstacles as to why Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan hasn't signed Santino for 22. I was confident this was going to go down. I think you were as well. But I'm starting to feel like it's going to go in a different direction. I don't think Santino's going to be there.
So I don't think Santino is going to go to Penske 2022 because, as everybody knows, I think that car's parked. But he's good. It's proven every race he gets into how good he is, how fast he is. His speed is there even for qualifying, and then he gets in the race and he's consistently staying out of trouble and doing well. So he's good. I put him in the car, but that's me.
Right. So final topic here. So I shared an article with you about that talked a lot about Graham Rahal, and it was titled "Why IndyCar's Missing Title Threat Feels Undervalued." It was from therace.com. Tim, is Graham getting shortchanged, or has his performance or lack thereof earned this shortchange?
His lack of performance has caused the lack of interest in his running and what he's going to do. I think we spoke just earlier today that his last win was in 2017. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not up there and you're not battling for the win, it doesn't have to be week in and week out. It could be, every couple of races or so. You're not going to be talked about. So I think you get what's coming based on your performance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's been some unlucky situations for Graham this year, and I think in a few years past, right? But I've said almost every podcast that you cannot continue to qualify on average 13th this season and expect to drive through the field to victory. This, to me, only increases your chances for something unlucky to happen to you. There's no other way to say that, right? When Lundgaard came in at the IMS road course and qualified 5th, that had to rock that team to the core. Okay. Because they had not seen that. Still haven't seen it. Graham qualified 5th this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was a big deal. So back to Ferrucci. I have less confidence that he's going to Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. Could these temp deals with Ferrucci, Lundgaard, and now Askew through the rest of the season be a search for somebody who can help set up the car? I know it's odd to say that, but I remember years ago when they used to talk at Andretti Green, which is what it was known at the time, leaned a lot on Brian Herta for setups. So it's not unprecedented by any means. By the way, Graham has had one pole since 2017 and only 3 poles in his top tier IndyCar career. Okay. So I'm going to go a little bit further. The article mentions the difference in the car Sato drives and the setup preference for Graham. So is Graham unwilling? And this is for you. Is Graham unwilling or is Graham unwilling or unable to adapt?
Yeah. Yes, he's unwilling, and he may be unable. It might be both, honestly. As he stated, they drive totally separate cars, meaning separate setups on their cars.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore they're not able to gel as well when it comes to coming up with a setup for that satisfies both drivers. But having said that, it can't be that far off driving styles. It's the same vehicle, and if you get it set up in a way that is drivable, we talked about speed down the straightaway, traction off the corners, the right balance. Any of those drivers should be able to drive that car. So unfortunately, I feel like this whole looking for another driver is in a way to help Graham succeed in his car setup, because they've not been as fortunate in being able to do that with the teammate that they have now. And that's, I don't know. I don't think it's a way to look at teammate. I think you need someone with a hot shoe that can drive a car. And I shouldn't say it's for every man for themselves or every driver for themselves, but in a way it is. And you've got to gel with your engineer so they know how to set it up properly for your vehicle. And if you're out looking for a driver that has a similar setup, then shame on you, in my opinion. Let's go out and find the best driver that's available and put them in the car.
So this weekend, Graham thanked Oliver Askew for the help with mentioned that Oliver's program had helped achieve that qualifying result. So it kind of lends a little bit to that theory. I had these part of my notes already written before this weekend even happened. So I had intended to talk to you about it. So this kind of just plays into the hands of this thing. But I'm going to finish up with this. So Sato has had wins. I'm like you, right? I don't know what you do to adapt your driving style to be a little closer to your teammate. I know nothing about that. Okay. Sato has had wins in the time that Graham continues to struggle. To go along with Graham's history in qualifying, in the same period, Sato has had 5 poles since 2017 and 5 wins. I know nothing about driving an IndyCar, but what I do know in my heart, I would do everything I could to try to figure out what the hell he's doing that I'm not doing.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. Yeah. And when you look at that, that's eye-popping. That is huge news. Sato has had 5 poles since 2017 and 5 wins in that same time period. That's big.
Huge. So there it is. To quote Jeremy Clarkson on Top Gear, on that bombshell, this is the Grand Prix of Portland race review and a little extra. So thanks for joining us. As always, we look forward to catching you after Laguna, and it's been a good time. Hey, Tim, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me again, Dan, and look forward to the next event.
It is. And with that, we'll say good night. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.